Get your snack ready, settle in, and let's dive into this incredible journey. Popcorn Session Channel presents The Maze Runner. A young man awakens in an elevator that accelerates and stops abruptly, being surprised by a group of other young people who open the door. Gally, with a determined attitude, pushes the newcomer out while the group gathers around him. Before he can fully comprehend the situation, the newcomer escapes but soon realizes that he is surrounded by imposing walls. The entire area is an enigma. Trapped and confused, the newcomer is freed by Albie, who quickly becomes his guide. Albie reveals that amnesia is common, as everyone arrives without memories. He introduces the Glade, explaining how the young people, known as Gladers, work together to cultivate food and build shelters. The elevator, referred to as the box, is sent monthly, bringing essential supplies and a new member to the group, though no one knows who sends them. Albie introduces Newt, the second in command, while the newcomer tries to absorb this new reality. While exploring the glade, he notices an opening in the wall, but Albie warns that going beyond the walls is forbidden. Chuck, a helpful fellow, assists the newcomer in setting up a place to sleep. However, as they approach the door, Chuck emphasizes the prohibition of going inside. Mio and Ben emerge through the wall, revealing that only the runners have permission. A curiosity awakens in the newcomer, but he is pushed aside, leaving him with more questions than answers. The rest of the group gathers as the newcomer panics. Suddenly, something moves threateningly within the walls before sealing shut. That night, Newt explains to the newcomer that the runners have been mapping the maze for 3 years, seeking to find an exit. He points out a subtle sound echoing around, revealing it to be the maze, which is constantly changing. Only the strongest and fastest Gladers can be runners, as no one has ever survived being trapped inside the maze overnight. Newt warns about creatures called grievers that kill those who get trapped in the maze. Later, the newcomer declares that he wants to be a runner. Gally challenges the newcomer to a fight, initially easily overpowering him. However, the newcomer uses Gally's strength against him, infuriating him. Gally knocks the newcomer down, causing him to fall and hit his head. Suddenly, the newcomer remembers that his name is Thomas. The Gladers celebrate and welcome him into the group, including Gally. The celebration is interrupted when a distant howl indicates the presence of a griever, fortunately unable to pass through the walls. While Thomas sleeps, he has flashes of memory, including faces of doctors and a young woman. The next morning, Albie takes Thomas for a walk, revealing that it hasn't always been peaceful in the glade, and others have died due to fear. They established order to maintain peace, and Albie observes that Thomas is curious, unlike the others, but still needs to follow the rules. Then, Albie shows the wall where everyone's names are engraved, including those who have died. Thomas adds his name to the wall. Later, he contributes to farming, but his mind is occupied with ways to escape. Every thought of Thomas seems to have been attempted and failed. Desperate, he decides to explore the forest, only to be surprised by Ben, who accuses him of doing something to them and tries to strangle him. In an act of self-defense, Thomas grabs a bone from some animal and strikes Ben's face to escape. He runs back to the glade, where Newt, acting quickly, hits Ben's face with a shovel. Thomas explains that Ben attacked him for no apparent reason. The others pin Ben to the ground, revealing an infected wound on his shirt. Albie explains that Ben was stung by a griever, affecting him with the transformation. Albie asks Thomas what Ben said, and he admits that Ben claimed everything is Thomas's fault. At dusk, the Gladers force Ben back into the maze. Ben tries to escape as the walls close slowly, but the Gladers push him inside. Then, Ben has no choice but to go. That night, Thomas has a dream about a laboratory and a scientist ensuring that the Ike is good. He sees the face of the young woman again, promising that everything will change. Thomas wakes up and finds Miho and Albie heading to the maze. He questions why Albie is going there since he's not a runner. Newt assumes that Albie wants to track where Ben was stung. Thomas insists that everyone trusts Albie, as he was the first to arrive in the glade and has helped everyone who came after. The Gladers are instructed to return by nightfall, but the doors start closing suddenly. Soon, they see Miho carrying an injured Albie, and everyone shouts for him to cross without Albie. With the doors almost closed, Miho is still far away. Impulsively, Thomas enters and manages to get to the other side before the doors shut. He checks on Albie, who was stung. Suddenly, the grievers howl in the distance, and the walls begin to move. Miho gets up to leave, but Thomas insists on not leaving Albie behind. The two traverse the maze carrying Albie, but soon the grievers approach, increasing the tension and danger in the dark night of the maze. Thomas notices vines on a wall and decides to use them to hide. Miho, realizing the proximity of a griever, panics and flees. Thomas struggles to hold Albie's weight alone and desperately hides in the vines. As the griever passes, Thomas ties the vines to keep Albie in place and hides again when the creature returns. While retreating, Thomas steps on something viscous above him, discovering that the griever is nearby, ready to attack. Thomas runs as the monster pursues him but ends up in a dead-end alley, with the griever lunging at him. Quickly, Thomas climbs some vines, reaches the lower walls, and the griever follows. In a risky move, Thomas jumps to another wall and grabs the vines, causing them to fall. The griever gets entangled in the vines while Miho finally finds Thomas. Together, they find a wall closing and hastily enter to put the wall between them and the monster. Thomas stays behind, waiting for the griever to approach, then enters the corridor, barely making it to the other side before it closes. The tension and the race for survival continue in the dangerous maze. The next day, the maze opens, and to everyone's surprise, they see Miho and Thomas carrying Albie back. Miho announces that Thomas killed a griever in the council hall. Gally points out that Thomas broke the rules, despite saving Albie and Miho. Killing a griever may cause trouble, and Gally suggests punishing Thomas, but Miho wants to recruit him as a runner. Suddenly, they hear movement outside, the box is being raised out of the usual schedule. Upon opening the box, they find a young girl inside with a note in her hand, stating that she is the last. She wakes up suddenly and breathes Thomas's name before fainting. Newt asks if Thomas knows her, but he claims not to. The others become nervous at the idea that the box will no longer transport supplies. Thomas decides to go back into the maze, but Miho stops him. Thomas argues that they've never captured or killed a griever before, so they should investigate what they are facing. After much reflection, Miho brings more people to help them. The group heads to where they left the griever's body, and upon removing its leg, it disassembles. Miho finds a device hidden inside the griever's flesh with the number 7 and the label WCKD. They take the device back to the others, and Thomas instigates everyone to go back and figure out how to escape. Gally is against breaking the rules and emphasizes that Thomas should be punished. Finally, Newt decides that Thomas will spend a night in the pit as punishment, but still officially promotes him to a runner. Miho takes Thomas to the runner's hut, where they have built the maze map. He reveals that they have already mapped the entire maze, but there is no way out. Albie decides not to tell the rest to maintain hope, but now Miho believes they have a chance. The maze is divided into 8 sections marked by numbers, and each time it changes, it opens a section in a specific pattern. Section 7 was open while they were inside, so that's likely where the griever they killed came from. Finally, the girl wakes up and climbs the wicked tower, throwing rocks at the gladers. Thomas makes her stop and climbs the tower, finding the girl holding a knife. When he introduces himself, she reveals her name is Teresa. Thomas calms the situation, and Teresa says she doesn't remember him. Later, Thomas reveals that she came with the note, and the box hasn't been lowered since then. Teresa remembers being in the water being watched by people and a woman mentioning that WCKD is good. Thomas admits to having similar dreams and seeing her face in them. They wonder why they are the only ones with memories other than their names. Teresa reveals 2 syringes she found in her pocket labeled WCKD. Thomas deduces that it's what WCKD means. That night, he suggests injecting something, and with one of the syringes, Albie starts to struggle. Teresa holds him while the others assist, and immediately, Albie loses consciousness. Gally takes Thomas to the pit, and Thomas asks why Gally hates him. Gally explains that everything started falling apart after Thomas arrived. Shortly after, Chuck brings food to Thomas and shares a small toy he believes is from his parents, although he's not sure. Thomas assures Chuck that they will find the way out and return the toy to his parents. At dawn, Mio and Thomas run to the inner ring of the maze and discover that Section 7 is open again, which shouldn't happen. Inside, they find metal structures they call blades, along with Ben's discarded clothes. Suddenly, the device they took from the griever starts beeping. They follow the sound until they reach an unfamiliar area for Miho. When they reach a dead end, the beeping stops, and the number on the screen turns green. Suddenly, the walls open, revealing a path, and they enter. In the tunnel, a red light scans them, and something moves nearby. Then, they run when the beeping resumes. Outside, the blades start moving, and they run out of the maze. However, walls emerge from the ground, closing the section. Mio and Thomas enter a path just before it closes. Finally, they return to the glade and announce that they found a new passage that could be an exit. Mio assumes that this is the passage where the grievers go during the day, and Gally emphasizes that they might end up facing dozens of grievers inside. Thomas and Gally argue until Teresa announces that Albie has woken up. They check on Albie, and Thomas encourages him, saying they can finally leave. However, Albie insists that they won't let them. He remembers everything and tells Thomas that he has always been their favorite. A commotion outside grabs everyone's attention, as the maze doors are not closing. Instead, more doors are opening around the glade. Grievers appear, and everyone runs for cover. Thomas and some others hide in the field, but one of them is caught by a griever. Thomas frees everyone to the homestead, while Gally takes some people inside the box. The monsters kill many gladers and destroy their camp. When a blockade stops him, Teresa throws a lantern that burns the creature, but the griever still pursues Albie. Albie falls, and Thomas positions himself between him and a griever. Suddenly, Newt and some others shoot arrows at the monster and guide the group to the council hall, seeking protection and desperately trying to survive the ruthless griever attack. The gladers remain quiet as the griever climbs the structure. However, the monster destroys the roof, taking one of them. Chuck is captured, but Thomas and Miho hold onto him. Albie attacks the griever until his arm breaks, and he steps back. However, Albie is caught by another griever. Thomas grabs him, and Albie tells him to finish the job before being dragged away. Suddenly, the grievers disappear. Gally arrives and punches Thomas, accusing him of causing everything. He reminds everyone that Albie said Thomas is one of the people who sent them there. Convinced that Gally is right, Thomas grabs a stinger that Albie cut from the griever and stings himself, losing consciousness. Thomas dreams of a facility where many of them were when they were younger. He sees the gladers inside tanks being monitored by scientists. When he wakes up, he and Teresa are in the pit. Newt explains that Gally has taken control and insists that anyone who doesn't join him will be banished to the maze with Thomas. The mystery of memories, the facility, and the purpose of the maze deepens as the gladers face internal and external challenges threatening their survival and unity. Thomas reveals that he remembers the glade is a test that started when they were children, and they were experimented on until they began to disappear one by one. He confesses that he and Teresa worked for the people who put them there, but are unsure why they were sent there. Newt encourages him, saying that what matters is what they can do now. He urges Thomas to finish what he started so that Albie's death was not in vain. Later, Thomas and Teresa are taken to the door. Some still hesitate to banish Thomas, asking if he can help them escape. However, Gally insists they don't need to risk their lives to leave. He reveals that he doesn't intend to banish Thomas and Teresa. Instead, he offers them to the grievers. Teresa is tied to a post, but when others lift Thomas, he attacks them. Miho, Newt, and Chuck join in to restrain Gally. Thomas urges the others to join them, emphasizing that he prefers risking their lives over being prisoners in the glade. Some gladers are convinced, and Thomas offers Gally to join them, but he only wishes them good luck. The group enters the maze, and Thomas leads them to the tunnel in Section 7. They fight a griever with spears, and one more is thrown over. Teresa attacks the griever, causing Chuck to drop the device. Chuck jumps and catches it, but sees the griever climbing. The others throw the griever off the bridge, but two more emerge. Chuck and Teresa open the tunnel while the others fight the grievers. At the end of the tunnel, Teresa activates a security code and asks Thomas for the code. Thomas asks Miho for the sequence in which the maze sections open. Suddenly, a griever falls on Miho, and another glader stabs the monsters in the face. The griever bites the glader and drags him away. Miho shouts the sequence, and Teresa uses the code to open the door. Suddenly, the walls of the passage close, crushing the grievers inside. A door opens inside the tunnel, and the survivors enter. They enter another room and find the dead scientists. The mystery unfolds, revealing deeper layers of the dark purpose behind the glade and the maze. They reach the control room and see monitors showing the glade. Thomas activates a video clip where Dr. Ava Page introduces herself as the Director of Operations for the World Catastrophe Kill Zone Department. She congratulates the boys on completing the maze trials. She reports that the sun scorched the earth, killing billions due to fire and famine. Next, a deadly virus known as the flare turned survivors into rage-infected people. However, a new generation seemed to be immune to the virus. Scientists placed the young people in the glade to study their brain activity in rigorous environments to formulate a cure. Ava emphasizes that not everyone agreed with the experiment. Soldiers begin to invade behind her as she insists that their experiments were for the common good. After the video, Thomas finds her body in another room behind them. Another door opens, but everyone hesitates. Suddenly, Gally appears, but he has been stung. Gally points a gun at Thomas and claims they belong to the maze. He pulls the trigger, and Chuck pushes Thomas away, while Miho throws a spear at Gally. Gally dies, but Chuck is shot. Chuck returns the toy to Thomas, thanking him for giving him a chance. Chuck soon passes away, and Thomas mourns. Armed people invade and take them outside. Thomas finds himself in the desert and is thrown into a helicopter with the others. The people assure them that they are safe as the helicopter flies over the maze. With them out, Thomas holds a meeting with the WCKD people. He wipes fake blood from his forehead and announces that the maze trial was successful, and now the group can proceed to Phase 2.